What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into something absolutely insane. We have compiled the 10 most shocking, unbelievable, downright terrifying moments in aviation history. And the craziest part? Every single one of these moments was caught on camera. You're going to see footage that looks like it's straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster, but this is 100% real footage. Pilots becoming heroes in the blink of an eye, planes doing things they were never designed to do, survival stories that will leave you completely speechless. These aren't just stories. Real-life events with people who faced impossible odds thousands of feet in the air, planes landing with no engines, pilots battling catastrophic failures that should have been unsurvivable. Counting down from 10 to 1, you are not going to want to miss our number 1 pick. It will change how you look at flying. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a story that many of you have probably heard of. But seeing the actual footage is something else entirely. This is the miracle on the Hudson. On January 15, 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York City. But just 3 minutes after takeoff, disaster struck. The plane flew into a massive flock of Canada geese, which were sucked into both engines, causing a complete and catastrophic failure of engine power. Imagine being on that plane. 1 second you're climbing into the sky, the next, there's a loud bang, a smell of smoke, and then, silence. Captain Sully Sullenberger knew they wouldn't make it to an airport. He had seconds to make a decision that would determine the fate of all 155 people on board. In an act of incredible skill and bravery, he decided to land the Airbus A320 on the freezing waters of the Hudson River. Against all odds, it stayed intact. It floated. Not a single life was lost. It was a 1-in-a-million landing, a true miracle. Coming in at number 9 is a story that is less of a miracle and more of a chilling mystery. This is the story of Air France Flight 447. On June 1, 2009, an Airbus A330 took off from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, heading to Paris, France. It was a routine overnight flight filled with 228 passengers and crew. But then, it vanished. It just disappeared from radar without a single distress call. For days, the world was baffled. How could a modern, state-of-the-art airliner just disappear without a trace? Search and rescue teams from multiple countries scoured a massive area of the ocean. They found nothing but a few scattered pieces of wreckage. It was one of the biggest aviation mysteries of the modern era, and for 2 years the families of the victims had no answers. The breakthrough came nearly 2 years later. An unmanned submarine searching the ocean floor nearly 2.5 miles deep finally located the main wreckage field and the plane's black boxes. What they discovered was a shocking combination of technical failure and human error. Ice crystals had blocked the plane's pitot tubes, causing the autopilot to disconnect, and the confused pilots, flying in the dead of night through a storm, made critical errors. For over 4 minutes the plane fell from the sky with stall warnings blaring in the cockpit, but the pilots couldn't figure out what was happening until it was too late. At number 8, we have an incident that looks like a scene from an action movie, but it was terrifyingly real. This is Qantas Flight 32. On November 4, 2010, the world's largest passenger plane, an Airbus A380, took off from Singapore with 469 people on board. But just 4 minutes into the flight, there was a huge, uncontained explosion. One of the engines literally blew itself apart. Shrapnel from the exploding engine ripped through the wing like a shotgun blast. It severed critical hydraulic lines, fuel lines, and electrical wiring. Over 21 of the plane's 22 systems were damaged or completely disabled. In the cockpit, the pilots were bombarded with an endless cascade of error messages, over 50 of them. The plane was severely crippled. They were flying a 500-ton, mortally wounded giant. The pilots had to manually calculate the plane's landing distance because the onboard computers were fried. They spent nearly 2 hours circling, trying to work through the insane number of problems. In a display of incredible airmanship, the crew managed to get the plane back to Singapore. The landing was incredibly risky. They were coming in way too fast with damaged brakes and a blown tire. But they touched down and came to a halt just feet from the end of the runway. Every single person survived. The crew's heroic actions saved 469 lives. Our number 7 story sounds completely made up, but I swear it's true. Imagine this. You're flying at 41,000 feet and suddenly both engines on your Boeing 767 just stop. Not because of birds, not because of an explosion, but because the plane has completely run out of fuel. This is the insane story of Air Canada Flight 143, the Gimli Glider. July 23, 1983. Canada was switching from imperial to metric system. The ground crew made a critical conversion error. They used pounds instead of kilograms, so the plane took off with less than half the fuel it needed. At 41,000 feet, the first engine flamed out. Minutes later, the second engine died. The massive Boeing 767 became a glider. The pilots were flying a 132-ton metal tube on only a few backup instruments. It was a nightmare scenario. But Captain Bob Pearson was an experienced glider pilot. First Officer Maurice Quintal knew about an old runway at the former RCAF base in Gimli. It was their only shot. The Gimli runway had been turned into a racetrack hosting a family race day. Pearson had to perform a forward slip and landed the plane. The front landing gear collapsed, but he brought it to a stop. All 69 people walked away unharmed. This next one at number 6 is straight out of a horror movie. It's the story of British Airways Flight 9. On June 24, 1982, a Boeing 747 was flying from London to Auckland, with a stop in Kuala Lumpur. Over the Indian Ocean, the plane flew into a strange glowing cloud. The pilots saw St. Elmo's fire dancing across their windscreen like flickering blue lightning. They'd flown into a dense ash cloud from Mount Galungung's eruption. Volcanic ash isn't like normal smoke, it's tiny particles of rock and glass. The ash was sucked into the engines, melted and fused to the turbine blades. One by one, all 4 engines flamed out. The giant 747 became the world's heaviest glider, falling from 37,000 feet with 263 people on board. The first officer made a now famous announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a small problem. All 4 engines have stopped. We are doing our damnedest to get them going again. I trust you are not in too much distress." As the plane fell out of the ash cloud, cooler temperatures caused molten ash to solidify and flake off. The crew tried once more. Engine 4 sputtered back to life, then 3, then 1, then 2. They had power again. But the ash had sandblasted the cockpit windows almost opaque. They landed by looking through a tiny sliver of clear glass. Against all odds, they landed safely in Jakarta. Breaking into our top 5 is one of the most famous survival stories in aviation history. United Airlines Flight 232. On July 19, 1989, a DC-10 was flying from Denver to Chicago. Mid-flight, the fan disc in the tail-mounted engine catastrophically failed. It disintegrated. The explosion sent shrapnel flying at supersonic speeds, severing all 3 hydraulic systems. This is a pilot's worst nightmare. Losing all hydraulics on a DC-10 is considered an unsurvivable event. The hydraulics control everything: rudder, ailerons, elevators. The pilots suddenly had a plane that would not respond to any inputs. They were essentially passengers in a 200-ton missile. By incredible luck, Denny Fitch, a DC-10 training instructor, was a passenger. Working together, the crew discovered the only way to control the plane was by varying thrust of the 2 wing-mounted engines. Increasing power on one engine, decreasing on the other to turn. Both engines high to climb, both low to descend. It was like trying to drive a car with only the gas pedal. For 44 minutes they wrestled the crippled jet towards Sioux City. The footage of the approach is terrifying. The plane porpoised up and down and banked wildly as they fought just to keep the wings level. As they neared the runway, the right wing dipped and caught the ground. The plane cartwheeled, broke apart and erupted in a massive fireball. It was a horrific crash, but because of the crew's effort, 184 of 296 on board survived. A crash landing that redefined what was possible in a crisis. This next story at number 4 is a tragic one, but it's a testament to the incredible bravery of pilots fighting until the very end. This is the crash of Alaska Airlines Flight 261. On January 31, 2000, a McDonnell Douglas MD-83 took off from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, heading for San Francisco with 88 passengers and crew. During the climb, the pilots began to experience problems with the plane's horizontal stabilizer, the small wing on the tail that controls pitch. The pilots reported that the stabilizer was jammed and they were struggling to keep the plane level. For over an hour they worked with maintenance crews on the ground, trying to troubleshoot the problem. They decided to divert to Los Angeles International Airport. However, as they were preparing for landing, they tried to use the primary trim system one more time. This turned out to be a fatal mistake. The jack screw had stripped its threads due to improper maintenance. When it finally failed, the stabilizer was left completely loose, and the plane immediately pitched into an uncontrollable vertical nosedive. The pilots fought with all their strength. For 81 horrifying seconds, the plane plunged towards the Pacific Ocean. They even managed to fly the plane upside down, but they couldn't recover. The plane plunged into the ocean, killing everyone on board. Coming in at number 3 is a story of incredible bravery. Not just from the cockpit, but from the passengers as well. This is Southwest Airlines Flight 1380. On April 17, 2018, a Boeing 737 was flying from New York to Dallas with 149 people on board. About 20 minutes into the flight, the left engine suffered a catastrophic failure. A fan blade had broken off due to metal fatigue and the engine exploded. Debris from the engine blew out a passenger window, causing explosive decompression. The sudden rush of air partially sucked passenger Jennifer Reardon out of the broken window. It was pure chaos and terror. Passengers nearby immediately rushed to help, grabbing her and desperately trying to pull her back against the incredible force of the wind. They held on for over 12 minutes. In the cockpit, Captain Tammy Jo Schultz, a former fighter pilot for the U.S. Navy, remained incredibly calm. Her skill as a pilot, honed by years of flying high-performance military jets, was on full display. The audio recordings of her conversation with air traffic control are now legendary. With no sign of panic, she calmly stated, "We have a part of the aircraft missing, so we're going to need to slow down a bit." She masterfully handled the crippled aircraft and guided it for an emergency landing in Philadelphia. She landed so smoothly that passengers broke into applause. Captain Schultz's incredible cool under pressure saved 148 lives. At our number 2 spot is a disaster that marked the end of an era. This is the tragic crash of Air France Flight 4590, the Concorde. For decades, the Concorde was the pinnacle of aviation, a supersonic jet that could fly from Paris to New York in under 3.5 hours, traveling faster than the speed of sound. It was a symbol of luxury, speed, and technological marvel, 27 years of perfect safety. But on July 25, 2000, everything changed. A charter flight of German tourists bound for a New York cruise was speeding down the runway when it ran over a small metal strip fallen from a Continental DC-10. The 17-inch strip shredded a Concorde tire. The tire exploded with incredible force. A chunk of rubber hurled into the wing didn't pierce it, but created a shockwave that ruptured a fuel tank. Fuel poured out right next to hot engines and ignited. The Concorde was forced to take off, trailing a massive plume of fire. The horrifying footage shows this iconic aircraft taking off with a giant tail of fire. The fire caused 2 engines to fail and the landing gear wouldn't retract. The pilots fought to control the burning plane, trying for a nearby airport but losing altitude and control. Less than 2 minutes after takeoff, it crashed into a hotel in Gonesse. All 109 on board were killed plus 4 people on the ground. The crash shattered public confidence and led to Concorde retirement 3 years later. A symbol of the future had met a tragic end. And here we are, the number 1 most shocking aviation moment caught on camera. This one is different. No emergency, no engine failure, no disaster. But it is, without a doubt, one of the most insane and unbelievable things you will ever see involving an airplane. I'm talking about the landings at Princess Juliana International Airport in St. Martin. Specifically, the landings over Maho Beach. If you haven't seen this, prepare to have your mind blown. The airport's runway is extremely short. Because of this, large jets including massive Boeing 747s and Airbus A340s have to fly an incredibly low approach directly over Maho Beach, a popular tourist spot. And when I say low, I mean they fly so low it feels like you can reach out and touch them. The footage is just unreal. You have hundreds of people on a beautiful Caribbean beach, and then the shadow of a giant jumbo jet engulfs them, roaring just 50 to 100 feet over their heads. You can see every detail of the landing gear. You can feel the immense power of the jet wash. It is a surreal, terrifying, and absolutely exhilarating spectacle. People gather there every day specifically to experience this, holding onto the airport fence to avoid being blown away by the jet blast. It is the single most extreme interaction between the public and a commercial airliner anywhere in the world. For years, videos of these landings have gone viral because they just don't look real. It looks like terrible CGI from a disaster movie, but it's happening every single day. It is the ultimate display of precision flying and a tourist attraction so dangerous and unbelievable that it has to be seen to be believed. And that is it. 10 of the most shocking aviation moments ever caught on camera. From the miracle on the Hudson to the mind-blowing landings at Maho Beach, these stories are just incredible. The bravery and skill of these pilots and crews are truly inspiring. So now I have to ask you, Which moment shocked you the most? Was it the Gimli Glider running out of fuel, the heroics of Captain Schultz, or the terrifying nosedive of Alaska 261? Let me know your pick down in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious to see which one hit you the hardest. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and hit subscribe right now. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. We put a ton of work into these videos for you guys. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys are the best. I'll see you in the next video.